Alexander the Great stands among the most extraordinary figures in world history, a king whose life, though brief, reshaped the political, cultural, and intellectual landscape of the ancient world. Born in 356 BCE in the Kingdom of Macedon, Alexander was destined for greatness from the moment of his birth. His father, King Philip II of Macedon, was a brilliant military strategist who transformed Macedon from a relatively minor kingdom into a dominant power in Greece. His mother, Olympias of Epirus, was a woman of intense ambition and deep religious conviction, who believed her son was destined for divine greatness. These two powerful influences, Philip's military genius and Olympias's belief in destiny, combined to shape Alexander's character, instilling in him both strategic brilliance and an unshakable confidence in his own fate. Alexander was born in the city of Pella, the capital of Macedon, during a time of political tension and constant warfare among the Greek city-states. Legends soon surrounded his birth. Ancient writers claim that on the night Alexander was born, the temple of Artemis at Ephesus, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, burned down, which some interpreted as a sign that a great force had entered the world. Olympias herself spread the belief that Alexander was the son of Zeus, the king of the gods, rather than a mere mortal. While modern historians view these stories as myth, they played a crucial role in shaping Alexander's self-image and how others perceived him throughout his life. From an early age, Alexander displayed remarkable intelligence, curiosity, and courage. Unlike many royal children, he was not content with a life of luxury and ease. He was fascinated by stories of heroes from Homer's Iliad, particularly Achilles, whom he regarded as his personal role model. Alexander reportedly kept a copy of the Iliad annotated by his teacher under his pillow alongside a dagger, symbolizing his devotion to both intellect and warfare. These heroic ideals deeply influenced his understanding of honor, glory, and leadership, motivating him to seek immortal fame through extraordinary deeds. One of the most important influences on Alexander's early development was his education under the philosopher Aristotle. When Alexander was about 13 years old, Philip invited Aristotle, one of the greatest thinkers of ancient Greece, to tutor his son. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander studied philosophy, ethics, politics, medicine, literature, and science. This education was not merely academic, it shaped Alexander's worldview and his approach to leadership. Aristotle taught him the value of Greek culture, rational thought, and the idea that Greeks were culturally superior to non-Greeks, a belief that would later influence Alexander's policies, even as he, paradoxically, adopted many foreign customs himself. Alexander's intelligence was matched by his exceptional physical abilities. He was trained in combat from a young age and quickly proved himself to be a fearless and skilled warrior. One famous story from his youth illustrates his natural leadership and insight. When a powerful and untamed horse named Bucephalus was brought to Philip's court, no one could ride it. Alexander observed that the horse was frightened of its own shadow and turned it toward the sun, calming it before mounting successfully. Impressed by his son's perception and courage, Philip is said to have told him, "My boy, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions. Macedon is too small for you." This moment symbolized Alexander's destiny to rule far beyond his homeland. As Alexander grew older, he began to take on real responsibilities within the Macedonian kingdom. At the age of 16, while Philip was away on campaign, Alexander was left in charge as regent. During this time, he demonstrated his ability to rule by suppressing a rebellion among the Thracian Maidi tribe and founding a city named Alexandropolis. This early success showed that Alexander was not only a talented warrior, but also a capable administrator and leader, qualities essential for a future king. Alexander's first major experience in large-scale warfare came at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BCE, where Macedon faced a powerful alliance of Greek city-states, including Athens and Thebes. Though still only 18 years old, Alexander commanded the cavalry on the left wing of the Macedonian army.
In a decisive moment, he led a bold charge that broke through the elite sacred band of Thebes, contributing significantly to Philip's victory. This battle effectively ended Greek independence and established Macedonian dominance over Greece. For Alexander, it was a defining moment that proved his military brilliance and earned him respect among seasoned warriors. Despite his successes, Alexander's relationship with his father was complex and often strained. Philip was a strong ruler with multiple wives, and tensions arose over questions of succession. When Philip married Cleopatra Eurydice, a Macedonian noblewoman, rumors spread that any son born from this marriage might challenge Alexander's claim to the throne. A public argument at the wedding banquet led to a temporary rift between father and son, with Alexander and Olympias leaving Macedon for a time. Although they eventually reconciled, these events highlighted the fragile nature of royal power and the constant threat of political intrigue. In 336 BCE, Philip II was assassinated during the celebration of his daughter's wedding. The assassin, a member of Philip's bodyguard, killed the king in a shocking and dramatic act. The exact motives behind the assassination remain unclear, and ancient sources suggest various conspiracies, including possible involvement by Olympias or even Alexander himself, though there is no definitive evidence to support these claims. What is certain is that Philip's death created a moment of extreme uncertainty for Macedon, as enemies, both within and outside the kingdom, saw an opportunity to challenge its power. At just 20 years old, Alexander ascended the throne of Macedon. His position was far from secure. Several Greek city-states believed that the young king would be weak and attempted to break free from Macedonian control. Meanwhile, rival claimants to the throne and hostile tribes along Macedon's borders posed serious threats. Alexander responded with remarkable speed and decisiveness. He executed or eliminated potential rivals, secured the loyalty of the Macedonian army, and marched south into Greece to reassert his authority. Alexander's swift and ruthless actions shocked the Greek world. When the city of Thebes rebelled against Macedonian rule, Alexander responded with overwhelming force. In 335 BCE, he captured Thebes, destroyed the city almost entirely, and sold its inhabitants into slavery, sparing only temples and the house of the poet Pindar. This brutal act sent a clear message to the rest of Greece: resistance would not be tolerated. As a result, other city-states, including Athens, quickly submitted to Alexander's authority, recognizing him as the leader of the Greek forces. With Greece firmly under his control, Alexander turned his attention to the grand ambition inherited from his father, the invasion of the Persian Empire. For decades, the Persians had been seen as the great enemy of Greece, and Philip had planned a campaign to unite the Greeks in a war of revenge. Alexander embraced this vision wholeheartedly, presenting himself as the champion of Greek freedom and the avenger of past Persian invasions. In 334 BCE, after securing his northern borders, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor, marking the beginning of one of the most extraordinary military campaigns in history. Before engaging in battle, Alexander performed symbolic acts that reflected both his respect for tradition and his belief in destiny. He visited the ruins of Troy, honoring Achilles and other heroes of the Trojan War, and made sacrifices to the gods. These gestures reinforced his image as a heroic leader, continuing the legacy of legendary warriors. They also strengthened the loyalty of his troops, who saw their young king not merely as a commander, but as a figure chosen by fate. At the start of his campaign, Alexander commanded a relatively small but highly disciplined army of around 35,000 soldiers, including Macedonian phalanx infantry, elite cavalry, and allied Greek troops. Facing him was the vast Persian Empire, which stretched from Asia Minor to Egypt and beyond. On paper, the odds seemed overwhelmingly against him, yet Alexander possessed several advantages: superior training, innovative tactics, and an unmatched ability to inspire loyalty and courage among his men. The first major confrontation between Alexander and the Persian forces occurred at the Battle of the Granicus River in 334 BCE. Despite warnings from his generals, Alexander chose to attack immediately rather than wait for more favorable conditions. Leading a daring cavalry charge across the river, he personally engaged the Persian commanders in close combat. The battle ended in a decisive Macedonian victory, opening the gates of Asia Minor to Alexander's advance. This victory not only boosted the morale of his army, but also demonstrated that the Persian forces were not invincible. Following the victory at Granicus, many Greek cities in Asia Minor welcomed Alexander as a liberator, freeing them from Persian control. He abolished tyrannies, restored democratic governments, and gained widespread support among the local populations. These actions reinforced his image as a just ruler and strengthened his strategic position. At the same time, Alexander began to display the qualities that would define his rule: boldness, adaptability, and an unrelenting drive to push forward, regardless of the risks.
After securing Asia Minor and proving that the Persian forces could be defeated, Alexander the Great advanced deeper into the heart of the Achaemenid Empire. His early victories had transformed him from a bold young king into a serious challenger to Persian supremacy, yet the greatest trials of his campaign still lay ahead. The Persian king, Darius III, now fully aware of the threat Alexander posed, began to assemble a massive army drawn from across his vast empire. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of the ancient world. In 333 BCE, Alexander and Darius first faced each other at the Battle of Issus, a narrow coastal plain in modern-day Turkey. Despite being heavily outnumbered, Alexander used the terrain to his advantage, neutralizing the numerical superiority of the Persian army. As in previous battles, Alexander personally led the decisive cavalry charge, aiming directly at Darius himself. When the Persian king saw Alexander advancing toward him, he lost his nerve and fled the battlefield. Darius's retreat caused panic among his troops, leading to a complete Persian collapse and a stunning Macedonian victory. The Battle of Issus was more than a military triumph. It was a psychological turning point. For the first time, the great king of Persia had fled before a foreign invader, shattering the long-held image of Persian invincibility. Alexander captured Darius's camp, including his mother, wife, and children. Rather than mistreating them, Alexander treated the royal family with respect and honor, ensuring their safety and comfort. This act of mercy enhanced Alexander's reputation as a noble and magnanimous ruler, winning admiration even among his enemies. Following Issus, Alexander faced a strategic decision. Instead of immediately pursuing Darius eastward, he chose to secure the eastern Mediterranean coast. This decision was driven by both military and political considerations. The Persian navy still posed a threat, and by capturing the coastal cities, Alexander could deprive Persia of its naval bases. One by one, the cities of Phoenicia fell to Alexander, though not without resistance. The most famous and challenging of these sieges was the Siege of Tyre. Tyre was a wealthy and heavily fortified island city that refused to surrender. Determined to take it, Alexander ordered the construction of a massive causeway connecting the mainland to the island. The siege lasted 7 months and tested Alexander's patience and resolve. Despite fierce resistance, naval attacks, and heavy casualties, Alexander persisted. When Tyre finally fell in 332 BCE, Alexander punished the city harshly, executing many defenders and selling thousands into slavery. The fall of Tyre sent a powerful message throughout the region. Resistance against Alexander would be met with relentless force. After Tyre, Gaza became the next major obstacle. Like Tyre, Gaza resisted fiercely, forcing Alexander into another prolonged siege. When Gaza eventually fell, Alexander again responded with severity, reflecting his growing intolerance for defiance. These brutal actions contrasted sharply with his earlier displays of mercy, revealing a complex character capable of both generosity and ruthless vengeance.
With the Levant secured, Alexander turned his attention southward toward Egypt. Alexander entered Egypt in 332 BCE and was welcomed as a liberator. The Egyptians, long resentful of Persian rule, saw Alexander as a deliverer rather than a conqueror. Unlike in other regions, Alexander showed great respect for Egyptian traditions and religion. He made sacrifices to the gods, participated in local rituals, and presented himself as a legitimate pharaoh. This ability to adapt to local customs became a defining feature of his rule and helped him maintain control over diverse populations. One of Alexander's most enduring achievements occurred during his time in Egypt, the founding of the city of Alexandria. Strategically located on the Mediterranean coast, Alexandria was designed to be a center of trade, culture, and learning. Over time, it would become one of the greatest cities of the ancient world, home to the famous Library of Alexandria and a melting pot of Greek and Egyptian culture. The city symbolized Alexander's broader vision of blending Greek civilization with the cultures of the lands he conquered. Seeking divine confirmation of his destiny, Alexander undertook a dangerous journey across the desert to the oracle of Zeus Ammon at Siwa. There, according to ancient sources, the oracle greeted him as the son of Zeus. Whether this was a misunderstanding, deliberate flattery, or a story later embellished, the visit had a profound impact on Alexander. From this point onward, his belief in his own divine status grew stronger, influencing his behavior and how others expected him to treat him. In 331 BCE, Alexander left Egypt and marched east to confront Darius once more. The decisive battle took place at Gaugamela, near modern-day Iraq. Darius had chosen the battlefield carefully, flattening the terrain to favor his chariots and cavalry. His army was enormous, vastly outnumbering Alexander's forces. Yet once again, Alexander's tactical brilliance proved decisive. By creating gaps in the Persian lines and launching a precise cavalry strike, Alexander broke through to Darius's position. As at Issus, Darius fled the battlefield when Alexander advanced toward him. The Persian army collapsed, and the Battle of Gaugamela ended in a decisive Macedonian victory. This battle was effectively the end of the Achaemenid Empire as a dominant power. With Gaugamela won, the road to the Persian heartland lay open, and Alexander marched triumphantly into the great cities of Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis. In Babylon, Alexander was welcomed with celebration and ceremony. The city's priests and leaders recognized him as the new ruler, and he showed respect for local traditions and temples. In Susa, he seized vast treasures accumulated by generations of Persian kings, providing him with immense wealth to fund his campaigns. These victories confirmed Alexander's status as the master of the Persian Empire, yet his ambitions continued to grow. The capture of Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of Persia, marked a symbolic climax of Alexander's conquest. During a night of celebration, Persepolis was set on fire, destroying its magnificent palaces. Ancient historians debate whether the burning was a deliberate act of revenge for Persian destruction of Greek cities or a drunken impulse later regretted by Alexander. Regardless of the cause, the destruction of Persepolis symbolized the definitive end of Persian imperial power. Although Darius was now a fugitive, Alexander continued to pursue him relentlessly. He sought not only to defeat Darius, but to legitimize his own rule as the rightful successor to the Persian kings. However, before Alexander could capture him, Darius was betrayed and murdered by his own satrap, Bessus, in 330 BCE. When Alexander found Darius's body, he reportedly covered it with his cloak and arranged a royal funeral, honoring him as a fallen king. With Darius dead, Alexander declared himself king of Asia, yet his campaign was far from over. Resistance continued in the eastern provinces, where local rulers and tribes refused to submit. Alexander now faced the challenge of ruling a vast and culturally diverse empire stretching from Greece to Central Asia. To secure his authority, he began to adopt Persian customs, dress, and court rituals, including the practice of proskynesis, which required subjects to bow before the king. These changes caused growing tension between Alexander and his Macedonian companions. Many of his officers believed that adopting Persian ways betrayed Greek values and traditions. The strain was evident in several tragic incidents, including the execution of Philotas and the killing of Clytus the Black, a close friend who had once saved Alexander's life. These events revealed the increasing isolation of Alexander and the heavy psychological burden of absolute power. Despite internal tensions, Alexander pressed onward into Central Asia, campaigning in regions such as Bactria and Sogdiana. These campaigns were among the most difficult of his career, marked by guerrilla warfare, harsh terrain, and fierce resistance. During this period, Alexander married Roxana, a local noblewoman, symbolizing his policy of uniting Macedonians and Asians. This marriage reflected his broader vision of a blended empire rather than one ruled solely by Greeks. By the end of this phase of his conquests, Alexander had transformed himself from a victorious general into an imperial ruler, facing the immense challenge of governance. His victories over Darius and the fall of the Persian Empire represented an unprecedented achievement in world history. Yet the deeper he ventured into Asia, the more complex his mission became. In the next part of this history, Alexander's invasion of India, the limits of his ambition, and the events leading to his mysterious death will reveal the final chapter of one of history's most extraordinary lives.
Following his conquest of the Persian Empire, Alexander the Great turned his attention eastward, setting his sights on India, a land both mysterious and legendary to the Greeks. His journey into the Indian subcontinent would test the limits of his ambition, the endurance of his army, and his capacity to rule a vastly diverse empire. From the treacherous mountain passes of the Hindu Kush to the fertile plains of the Indus River, Alexander faced a combination of natural obstacles, fierce warriors, and complex political landscapes unlike anything he had encountered before. In 327 BCE, Alexander led his army across the mountains of modern-day Afghanistan into the region known historically as Gandhara. The march was grueling. Soldiers endured harsh weather, narrow passes, and attacks from local tribes who used guerrilla tactics to harass the Macedonians. Despite these challenges, Alexander's strategic brilliance and relentless determination allowed him to maintain momentum. His ability to inspire loyalty and bravery among his men was critical during this period, as the harsh terrain and unfamiliar conditions tested the limits of human endurance. Upon entering India, Alexander encountered King Porus, a local ruler of the Punjab region who commanded a formidable army, including war elephants, a weapon the Macedonians had never faced. The confrontation came at the Battle of the Hydaspes in 326 BCE, fought near the banks of the Hydaspes River. The battle showcased Alexander's tactical genius. He carefully coordinated a crossing of the river under enemy observation, using feints and diversionary attacks to confuse Porus's forces. When the main assault began, Alexander's cavalry struck decisively, while his infantry held the line against elephants and foot soldiers. Despite Porus's valiant defense, the Macedonians emerged victorious. Alexander, impressed by Porus's courage and leadership, reinstated him as a ruler and granted him additional territory, demonstrating both his respect for bravery and his strategic pragmatism. The victory at Hydaspes opened the path further east, but it also marked a turning point in the morale of Alexander's army. His troops, weary from years of continuous campaigning and facing the prospect of unknown lands, demanded to return home. Alexander, though disappointed, understood the importance of maintaining loyalty and cohesion. In a remarkable display of leadership, he eventually agreed to halt further eastward expansion, allowing his army to begin the journey back toward Babylon,
a decision that revealed the delicate balance between ambition and the practical limits of power. During the return march, Alexander faced numerous challenges. His army traversed the arid Gedrosian desert, suffering from extreme heat, scarcity of water, and disease. Many soldiers perished, yet Alexander pressed onward, demonstrating a relentless commitment to his mission. He also sought to consolidate control over the territories he had conquered. In addition to military campaigns, he founded cities, encouraged cultural integration, and implemented administrative reforms to maintain stability across his vast empire. Alexander's vision of empire extended beyond military conquest. He encouraged the fusion of Greek and local cultures, promoting intermarriage and adopting certain customs of the lands he ruled. Macedonian officers and local women were arranged, creating bonds that reinforced loyalty and unity. Alexander himself married multiple women from different regions, including Roxana from Bactria and later Statera and Parasatis, daughters of Persian kings. These unions symbolized his ambition to blend cultures under a common imperial identity, a concept revolutionary for its time. Despite these achievements, Alexander's reign was increasingly marked by tension and internal conflict. His adoption of Persian royal customs, including elaborate court ceremonies and the practice of proskynesis, caused friction with his Macedonian companions, who saw such actions as a betrayal of Greek ideals. The execution of close associates, including Philotas, and the killing of Clytus the Black during a heated argument, reflected both the challenges of absolute power and Alexander's increasingly volatile temperament. These events highlighted the growing divide between his vision of a universal empire and the expectations of his Macedonian followers. In addition to political tensions, Alexander faced continuous resistance from local populations in Central Asia and India. Guerrilla warfare, difficult terrain, and logistical challenges forced him to adapt his military strategies. He relied on a combination of psychological warfare, diplomacy, and innovative tactics to subdue rebellious regions. His ability to integrate conquered peoples into his administration while maintaining a disciplined military presence was crucial to sustaining control over such a vast and diverse empire. Alexander's return journey also allowed for the further spread of Greek culture across Asia. He established numerous cities, many of which bore his name, such as Alexandria in Arachosia and Alexandria in the Caucasus. These cities served as administrative centers, military garrisons, and hubs of Hellenistic culture. They became focal points for the dissemination of Greek language, architecture, art, and philosophy, leaving a lasting cultural legacy that endured long after his death. By the time Alexander reached Babylon in 323 BCE, his health and energy were beginning to decline. Though still a formidable leader, the cumulative toll of years of campaigning, the strain of administering an empire, and the pressures of political intrigue weighed heavily upon him. In Babylon, he began planning further campaigns, including an invasion of the Arabian Peninsula. Yet fate intervened before these ambitions could be realized. Alexander fell ill suddenly in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar II in Babylon. Ancient sources provide varying accounts of his death, attributing it to fever, malaria, or perhaps poisoning, though the exact cause remains a mystery. On June 10th or 11th, 323 BCE, at the age of 32, Alexander the Great died. His passing left the vast Macedonian Empire without a clear successor, as he had not designated a capable heir. His empire that he had forged, stretching from Greece to the Indus Valley, quickly fragmented into territories controlled by his generals, known as the Diadochi. Alexander's death marked an era, yet his influence endured. The Hellenistic period, characterized by the spread of Greek culture, ideas, and institutions across Asia and the Mediterranean, was a direct result of his conquests. Cities founded by Alexander became centers of learning, trade, and cultural exchange. His military innovations, strategic thinking, and leadership principles became studied by future generals, shaping the art of warfare for centuries. Despite his brief life, Alexander's achievements were unparalleled. He created one of the largest empires in history, united diverse peoples under a common administration, and left a lasting cultural legacy. His vision of blending Greek and local traditions set a precedent for cross-cultural interaction and imperial governance. While his methods were often ruthless, his ambition, intelligence, and courage were undeniable, making him a figure whose legend has transcended time. In retrospect, Alexander the Great exemplifies the complex nature of leadership, the interplay between vision and pragmatism, and the extraordinary potential of human ambition. His life serves as both inspiration and cautionary tale, a story of unparalleled achievement, the costs of relentless conquest, and the enduring impact of a single individual on the course of world history. His legacy continues to captivate historians, scholars, and storytellers, ensuring that the name Alexander the Great will forever echo through the annals of time.
Though Alexander the Great died at the young age of 32, his influence on world history extended far beyond his brief life. The empire he created, stretching from Greece to the Indus Valley, fragmented soon after his death, but the cultural, military, and political effects of his conquests endured for centuries. Part 4 of his history examines the enduring legacy of Alexander, the Hellenistic era he initiated, and the ways in which his achievements shaped subsequent civilizations. After Alexander's death in Babylon in 323 BCE, the question of succession plunged his vast empire into chaos. Alexander had not appointed a capable heir, leaving only his half-brother, Philip III Aridaeus, who was mentally challenged, and his infant son, Alexander IV. The empire was divided among his generals, known as the Diadochi, who fought for control over different regions. Ptolemy secured Egypt, Seleucus gained Babylon and much of the Near East, Antigonus took parts of Asia Minor, and Cassander assumed control of Macedon and Greece. These divisions led to decades of warfare, yet Alexander's conquests had already reshaped the political and cultural map of the ancient world. One of Alexander's most significant legacies was the spread of Hellenistic culture. His policy of founding cities, many named Alexandria, across conquered territories, helped establish centers of Greek administration, trade, and culture. These cities became melting pots of Greek and local traditions, promoting the exchange of ideas, art, language, and science. Alexandria in Egypt, perhaps the most famous, housed the Great Library, attracting scholars from across the known world and preserving countless works of literature and science. Through these cities, Greek culture permeated the Mediterranean, the Near East, and Central Asia, creating a shared cultural framework that persisted long after Alexander's empire dissolved. In addition to cultural influence, Alexander's military tactics and leadership profoundly affected subsequent generations. His use of combined arms, phalanx infantry, cavalry, siege engines, and tactical maneuvers became a model for later commanders, including Roman generals such as Julius Caesar and Scipio Africanus. His ability to inspire loyalty, adapt to diverse combat conditions, and integrate conquered peoples into his army were lessons studied by military leaders for centuries. Alexander's campaigns demonstrated the power of strategy, innovation, and psychological warfare, establishing principles that remain relevant in military thought today. Alexander's approach to governance also left a lasting impact. He often integrated local elites into administration, respecting local customs and religious practices. This pragmatic approach helped him maintain control over diverse populations and influence the administrative practices of successor states. Hellenistic rulers continued this policy, blending Greek and local traditions in law, governance, and urban planning. The resulting fusion of cultures created a rich cosmopolitan environment, encouraging the trade, science, philosophy, and the arts.
The Hellenistic period that followed Alexander's death witnessed the flourishing of philosophy, science, and the arts. Cities founded by Alexander became centers for scholarship and innovation. Greek philosophy, literature, and drama spread across Asia and Egypt, interacting with local traditions and producing unique hybrid forms. Science and mathematics advanced through the work of scholars like Euclid and Archimedes, while astronomy and medicine benefited from the cross-cultural exchange facilitated by the Hellenistic world. Alexander's conquests, therefore, did not merely change political boundaries, they created a dynamic intellectual and cultural environment that shaped human thought for centuries. Alexander's legend also inspired later leaders and societies. Roman emperors, medieval kings, and Renaissance rulers all looked to his life as a model of ambition, courage, and strategic brilliance. His image as a heroic, almost mythical figure was reinforced by stories of his divine parentage, battlefield exploits, and vision of a united world. Even today, Alexander is studied as a symbol of leadership, military genius, and the potential for human achievement. However, Alexander's legacy was not without challenges and contradictions. His methods of conquest were often ruthless, involving mass killings, destruction of cities, and forced resettlements. The blending of cultures sometimes created tensions between local traditions and Greek influence. Additionally, the political fragmentation after his death revealed the limits of personal ambition. The vast empire he had created could not be sustained without a capable unifying leader. These complexities make Alexander a multifaceted figure, both a visionary and a conqueror, a builder of culture and a destroyer of kingdoms. Despite these contradictions, the enduring impact of Alexander's life is undeniable. His campaigns connected regions that had previously been isolated, establishing trade networks that facilitated the movement of goods, ideas, and technologies. The Hellenistic kingdoms that emerged after his death, Ptolemaic Egypt, Seleucid Mesopotamia, and Antigonid Macedon, maintained the structures he had created and extended Greek influence for centuries. In this way, Alexander's vision of a connected, cosmopolitan world began to take shape, influencing the development of cities, economies, and cultures across 3 continents. In summary, Alexander the Great's legacy transcended his military conquests. He created an enduring cultural and political framework, expanded the horizons of human knowledge, and inspired generations of leaders and scholars. The Hellenistic period that followed his death was characterized by cross-cultural exchange, intellectual growth, and the fusion of diverse traditions, a testament to the enduring influence of his life and vision. While his empire fragmented, the ideas, cities, and cultural innovations he left behind continued to shape the course of world history. Alexander's story reminds us that the impact of a single individual can resonate far beyond their lifetime, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire wonder, reflection, and study millennia after their passing.
Alexander the Great's influence extended far beyond the boundaries of his empire, leaving a lasting imprint on the course of world history. Part 7 of his history examines the global consequences of his campaigns, exploring how his conquests reshaped civilizations, trade networks, intellectual traditions, and cultural exchange. This part highlights the long-term impact of Alexander's vision and the enduring fascination with his life and achievements. One of the most significant aspects of Alexander's legacy was the creation of the Hellenistic world. By spreading Greek language, art, architecture, and philosophy across the Near East, Central Asia, and Egypt, Alexander facilitated a cultural fusion unprecedented in history. Cities such as Alexandria in Egypt, Antioch in Syria, and Ai-Khanoum in Bactria became centers of learning, commerce, and cultural interaction. These urban centers served as bridges between diverse civilizations, fostering dialogue between Greek and local traditions, and enabling the exchange of ideas, technologies, and knowledge. The Hellenistic period, which followed his death, saw the proliferation of this blended culture, influencing art,
literature, religion, and science for centuries. Trade and economic development were transformed by Alexander's conquests. By connecting the Mediterranean with the Near East, Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent, he established extensive trade networks that facilitated the movement of goods, ideas, and peoples. Luxury items such as spices, textiles, precious metals, and exotic animals traveled along these corridors, creating new markets and economic opportunities. The cities founded by Alexander became hubs of commerce, enabling wealth accumulation and the growth of urban culture. These networks persisted long after the fragmentation of his empire, underpinning the economic prosperity of successor states and influencing global trade patterns. Alexander's influence on intellectual life was equally profound. Greek philosophers, scientists, and scholars encountered new ideas and knowledge in the lands he conquered, leading to an unprecedented exchange of knowledge. Astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and natural sciences advanced as scholars combined Greek methods with observations from Egypt, Persia, and India. The Hellenistic period witnessed innovations in all areas of learning, from Euclidean geometry to the works of Eratosthenes and Archimedes. The blending of Greek and local knowledge created a foundation for future scientific inquiry, influencing Roman and later European thought. Religious and philosophical traditions were also shaped by Alexander's conquests. Greek religious practices mingled with local beliefs, resulting in syncretic systems that incorporated elements of multiple faiths. In Egypt, Alexander was worshipped as a pharaoh and associated with local deities. In Persia and Central Asia, Greek gods and heroes were integrated into existing mythologies. This cultural synthesis extended to philosophy, where Stoicism, Epicureanism, and other Hellenistic schools engaged with local thought, fostering a cosmopolitan intellectual environment. Alexander's campaigns thus accelerated the process of cultural diffusion and philosophical exchange, leaving a lasting imprint on the spiritual and intellectual life of the ancient world. The influence of Alexander's military achievements continued to resonate for centuries. His innovative tactics, such as the combined use of phalanx infantry, cavalry, and siege warfare, became models for later military leaders. Generals such as Julius Caesar, Hannibal, and Napoleon studied his campaigns, drawing lessons in strategy, logistics, and leadership. Beyond tactics, Alexander's approach to integrating conquered peoples into his armies and employing psychological strategies to maintain morale provided enduring insights into leadership and the management of complex organizations. Art and literature flourished as a result of Alexander's cultural legacy. Hellenistic art emphasized realism, emotion, and individuality, often portraying heroes, rulers, and everyday life with remarkable detail. Literary works celebrated his exploits, blending history, myth, and moral lessons. Over centuries, Alexander inspired poets, playwrights, and historians from classical antiquity to the Renaissance, creating a narrative of heroism and ambition that transcended borders. His life became a template for understanding leadership, courage, and the pursuit of greatness. Alexander's vision of governance and cultural integration influenced later empires. His policies demonstrated that effective rule could combine central authority with local autonomy, respect for traditions, and incorporation of diverse populations. The successor states of the Diadochi maintained these principles, facilitating the spread of Greek language, law, and administration while adapting to local conditions. This model of governance influenced subsequent empires from Rome to the Byzantine Empire and demonstrated the potential of cultural and political synthesis as a tool for stability and prosperity. Alexander's influence on intellectual life was equally profound. Greek philosophers, scientists, and scholars encountered new ideas and knowledge in the lands he conquered, leading to an unprecedented exchange of knowledge. Astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and natural sciences advanced as scholars combined Greek methods with observations from Egypt, Persia, and India. The Hellenistic period witnessed innovations in all areas of learning, from Euclidean geometry to the works of Eratosthenes and Archimedes. The blending of Greek and local knowledge created a foundation for future scientific inquiry, influencing Roman and later European thought. Religious and philosophical traditions were also shaped by Alexander's conquests. Greek religious practices mingled with local beliefs, resulting in syncretic systems that incorporated elements of multiple faiths. In Egypt, Alexander was worshipped as a pharaoh and associated with local deities. In Persia and Central Asia, Greek gods and heroes were integrated into existing mythologies. This cultural synthesis extended to philosophy, where Stoicism, Epicureanism, and other Hellenistic schools engaged with local thought, fostering a cosmopolitan intellectual environment. Alexander's campaigns thus accelerated the process of cultural diffusion and philosophical exchange, leaving a lasting imprint on the spiritual and intellectual life of the ancient world. The influence of Alexander's military achievements continued to resonate for centuries. His innovative tactics, such as the combined use of phalanx infantry, cavalry, and siege warfare, became models for later military leaders. Generals such as Julius Caesar, Hannibal, and Napoleon studied his campaigns, drawing lessons in strategy, logistics, and leadership. Beyond tactics, Alexander's approach to integrating conquered peoples into his armies and employing psychological strategies to maintain morale provided enduring insights into leadership and the management of complex organizations. Art and literature flourished as a result of Alexander's cultural legacy. Hellenistic art emphasized realism, emotion, and individuality, often portraying heroes, rulers, and everyday life with remarkable detail. Literary works celebrated his exploits, blending history, myth, and moral lessons. Over centuries, Alexander inspired poets, playwrights, and historians from classical antiquity to the Renaissance, creating a narrative of heroism and ambition that transcended borders. His life became a template for understanding leadership, courage, and the pursuit of greatness. Alexander's vision of governance and cultural integration influenced later empires. His policies demonstrated that effective rule could combine central authority with local autonomy, respect for traditions, and incorporation of diverse populations. The successor states of the diadochi maintained these principles, facilitating the spread of Greek language, law, and administration while adapting to local conditions. This model of governance influenced subsequent empires from Rome to the Byzantine Empire and demonstrated the potential of cultural and political synthesis as a tool for stability and prosperity. Alexander's influence on intellectual life was equally profound. Greek philosophers, scientists, and scholars encountered new ideas and knowledge in the lands he conquered, leading to an unprecedented exchange of knowledge. Astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and natural sciences advanced as scholars combined Greek methods with observations from Egypt, Persia, and India. The Hellenistic period witnessed innovations in all areas of learning, from Euclidean geometry to the works of Eratosthenes and Archimedes. The blending of Greek and local knowledge created a foundation for future scientific inquiry, influencing Roman and later European thought. Religious and philosophical traditions were also shaped by Alexander's conquests. Greek religious practices mingled with local beliefs, resulting in syncretic systems that incorporated elements of multiple faiths. In Egypt, Alexander was worshipped as a pharaoh and associated with local deities. In Persia and Central Asia, Greek gods and heroes were integrated into existing mythologies. This cultural synthesis
Alexander the Great's enduring legacy extends far beyond his territorial conquests, shaping military theory, scientific inquiry, urban development, and economic networks across the ancient world. Part 8 of his history delves into these dimensions, examining how his life and campaigns influenced subsequent civilizations, intellectual traditions, and global interactions, reinforcing the transformative impact of his leadership. One of Alexander's most profound contributions was in the realm of military strategy. His campaigns demonstrated an unprecedented integration of infantry, cavalry, and siege operations, optimized for different terrains and enemy formations. The Macedonian phalanx, combined with highly mobile companion cavalry, allowed for rapid and decisive maneuvers that outmatched larger enemy forces. Alexander's innovations were not limited to battlefield tactics. He also revolutionized logistics, supply chains, and military engineering. His siege of Tyre, for instance, involved the construction of a massive causeway, showcasing ingenuity and the practical application of engineering in warfare. Subsequent military leaders, including Julius Caesar, Hannibal, and Napoleon Bonaparte, studied Alexander's campaigns as exemplars of tactical brilliance, adaptability, and psychological warfare. Beyond strategy, Alexander's approach to leadership had a lasting influence on command structures and the psychology. Alexander the Great's enduring legacy extends far beyond his territorial conquests, shaping military theory, scientific inquiry, urban development, and economic networks across the ancient world. Part 8 of his history delves into these dimensions, examining how his life and campaigns influenced subsequent civilizations, intellectual traditions, and global interactions, reinforcing the transformative impact of his leadership. One of Alexander's most profound contributions was in the realm of military strategy. His campaigns demonstrated an unprecedented integration of infantry, cavalry, and siege operations, optimized for different terrains and enemy formations. The Macedonian phalanx, combined with highly mobile companion cavalry, allowed for rapid and decisive maneuvers that outmatched larger enemy forces. Alexander's innovations were not limited to battlefield tactics. He also revolutionized logistics, supply chains, and military engineering. His siege of Tyre, for instance, involved the construction of a massive causeway, showcasing ingenuity and the practical application of engineering in warfare. Subsequent military leaders, including Julius Caesar, Hannibal, and Napoleon Bonaparte, studied Alexander's campaigns as exemplars of tactical brilliance, adaptability, and psychological warfare. Beyond strategy, Alexander's approach to leadership had a lasting influence on command structures and the psychology of troops. He led from the front, sharing risks and hardships with his soldiers, fostering loyalty and morale. At the same time, he maintained strict discipline and enforced consequences for failure or disobedience, balancing inspiration with authority. Modern military theorists often cite Alexander's leadership as a model of transformational command, emphasizing the combination of vision, personal example, and strategic foresight. His ability to unify diverse groups within his army, including Greeks, Macedonians, Persians, and other allied troops, provides lessons in managing multicultural forces and sustaining cohesion across broad campaigns. In the realm of science and philosophy, Alexander's expeditions catalyzed the Hellenistic intellectual movement. Greek scholars accompanying his campaigns collected data on geography, astronomy, botany, zoology, and medicine. Observations of new flora and fauna, local medicinal practices, and astronomical phenomena enriched Greek scientific knowledge and laid the foundation for systematic study. Cities such as Alexandria in Egypt became hubs of learning, where scholars like Euclid, Eratosthenes, and Hero of Alexandria advanced mathematics, engineering, and physics. Philosophical schools, including Stoicism and Epicureanism, engaged with Eastern traditions, fostering dialogue and synthesis. Alexander's campaigns, therefore, not only expanded territory, but also facilitated a vibrant cross-cultural intellectual ecosystem. Alexander's influence on urban planning and architecture was equally transformative.
He founded over 20 cities, many strategically located along trade routes, rivers, and coasts, designed to serve as administrative centers, military garrisons, and cultural hubs. The layout of these cities often combined Greek architectural principles with local traditions, integrating theaters, temples, marketplaces, and public spaces. Alexandria in Egypt exemplified this synthesis, with its harbor, grid street plan, and monumental buildings setting standards for urban development. These cities promoted cultural exchange, economic growth, and governance, leaving an urban legacy that influenced city planning for centuries. Trade and economic networks expanded dramatically under Alexander's influence. By connecting the Mediterranean with the Near East, Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent, he created integrated trade corridors that facilitated the flow of goods, wealth, and knowledge. Spices, silk, precious metals, textiles, and other commodities moved across these networks, creating markets and stimulating urban growth. Alexander's founding of cities along these routes provided secure centers for trade and taxation, ensuring economic stability and enabling the prosperity of local populations. These networks persisted long after his empire fragmented, serving as the backbone for economic integration in Hellenistic kingdoms. Cultural synthesis was a hallmark of Alexander's global legacy. By promoting intermarriage between Macedonians and local elites, respecting religious practices, and integrating local customs into governance, he fostered a sense of shared identity across diverse regions. Greek language and cultural practices spread widely, interacting with Egyptian, Persian, Indian, and Central Asian traditions to produce a cosmopolitan Hellenistic culture. This synthesis influenced art, literature, religion, and philosophy, creating enduring forms of expression that survived the political fragmentation of his empire. The Hellenistic period is defined by this blending of cultures, which encouraged innovation and cross-pollination of ideas. Alexander's influence on literature and the arts was profound. Hellenistic art emphasized realism, individual expression, and emotional depth, drawing inspiration from the variety of cultures Alexander encountered. Sculpture, painting, and mosaics reflected both Greek techniques and local aesthetics. Literary works celebrated his campaigns, blending historical fact, myth, and moral lessons. Alexander became a central figure in epics, histories, and biographies, shaping the narrative of heroism and ambition across generations. His life inspired poets, dramatists, and historians, ensuring his legacy and cultural memory. The long-term political impact of Alexander's empire is also notable. His methods of governance, combining centralized control with local autonomy, strategic marriages, and the inclusion of diverse peoples in administrative roles, provided a template for effective imperial administration. Successor kingdoms, including the Ptolemaic, Seleucid, and Antigonid states, maintained these principles, creating stability and fostering cultural and economic development. Even later empires, such as Rome and Byzantium, drew lessons from Alexander's integration of multicultural populations and strategic use of cities to consolidate power. In modern times, Alexander's legacy continues to resonate. His life is studied in military academies, history courses, and leadership programs worldwide. Scholars debate his motives, methods, and psychological profile, reflecting on the ethical and strategic dimensions of his campaigns. Films, novels, and popular media reinterpret his life, exploring themes of ambition, power, and cross-cultural interaction. Alexander serves as both a historical figure and a cultural icon, exemplifying the complexities of leadership, conquest, and human aspiration. In conclusion, Part 8 emphasizes Alexander the Great's enduring contributions to military strategy, science, urban planning, trade, and cultural synthesis. His campaigns reshaped the ancient world, influencing the development of cities, economies, and intellectual life across 3 continents. By fostering cross-cultural exchange, integrating diverse peoples, and promoting knowledge, Alexander left a legacy that transcended the ephemeral nature of political conquest. His life demonstrates how vision, ambition, and innovation can leave a lasting imprint on human civilization, shaping the trajectory of cultures, economies, and societies for centuries. Alexander's story continues to inspire scholars, leaders, and the general public, highlighting the transformative power of extraordinary achievement and the enduring resonance of a single life in world history.
Alexander the Great's impact on global history extends beyond the battlefield in the cities he founded. His conquests catalyzed enduring transformations in political thought, culture, and intellectual life. Part 9 of his history explores these dimensions, highlighting how Alexander's vision influenced governance, diplomacy, education, science, and cultural development across continents, and how his legacy continues to resonate in both historical scholarship and popular imagination. A significant aspect of Alexander's enduring influence lies in the evolution of political thought and diplomacy. By uniting disparate regions under a single imperial framework, he created unprecedented challenges in governance, requiring innovative approaches to administration, integration, and negotiation. His method of appointing local rulers, respecting indigenous customs, and promoting intermarriage reflected a sophisticated understanding of political psychology and soft power. Alexander's approach demonstrated that authority could be consolidated not merely through military might, but through cultural respect, alliances, and strategic adaptation. These principles influenced subsequent empires, from the Hellenistic successor kingdoms to the Roman Empire, and even informed diplomatic strategies in later Eurasian states. Hellenistic culture, propagated and institutionalized by Alexander, provided fertile ground for intellectual and artistic flourishing. Greek philosophy, literature, and theater interacted with local traditions in Egypt, Persia, India, and Central Asia, producing hybrid forms of thought and expression. Philosophical schools such as Stoicism and Epicureanism gained exposure to Eastern ideas, integrating concepts from Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and Egyptian religious philosophy. This cross-cultural exchange enriched ethical, metaphysical, and epistemological discourse, creating a cosmopolitan intellectual environment that encouraged debate, inquiry, and synthesis. Alexander's campaigns thus functioned as both a literal and metaphorical bridge, connecting diverse systems of knowledge and belief. Education and the preservation of knowledge were central to Alexander's lasting impact. The establishment of libraries, academies, and research centers in cities such as Alexandria, Antioch, and Iconium facilitated the collection, translation, and dissemination of texts from multiple traditions. Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian knowledge coexisted and interacted, enabling advances in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, engineering, and geography. Scholars such as Euclid, Archimedes, Eratosthenes, and Galen benefited directly or indirectly from the cross-cultural knowledge networks that Alexander's conquests had enabled. This foundation of intellectual exchange laid the groundwork for centuries of scientific development and the preservation of knowledge that would later influence the Roman and Islamic worlds. Alexander's influence on art and architecture was profound and lasting. Hellenistic art, characterized by realism, dynamism, and emotional expression, was shaped by exposure to the diverse cultures he encountered. Monumental architecture, city planning, and urban design combined Greek principles with local traditions, resulting in sophisticated, functional, and aesthetically rich urban environments. Temples, theaters, public spaces, and fortifications reflected both artistic ambition and practical innovation. These urban centers became enduring symbols of cultural integration, serving as administrative hubs, centers of commerce, and focal points for intellectual and artistic activity.
Trade networks experienced dramatic expansion under Alexander's influence, connecting the Mediterranean with the Near East, Central Asia, and India. The movement of goods, peoples, and ideas facilitated economic growth, urbanization, and cultural exchange. Alexandria, situated at the nexus of Mediterranean and Red Sea trade, became an economic powerhouse, while other cities along major trade routes served as logistical and commercial nodes. These networks not only strengthened the economies of Hellenistic kingdoms, but also ensured the long-term diffusion of Greek culture, ideas, and technologies across a vast geographical area. The myth-making surrounding Alexander has contributed significantly to his historical impact. Ancient chroniclers presented him as both heroic and divine, and these narratives have persisted for millennia. Stories of his exploits, strategic brilliance, and personal charisma were transmitted through Greek, Roman, Islamic, and European literary traditions, reinforcing his image as an archetype of ambition, leadership, and greatness. The intertwining of historical fact and legend created a template for understanding leadership, heroism, and the consequences of ambition, influencing political theory, literature, and popular culture. Alexander's leadership style, combining audacity, intelligence, charisma, and ruthlessness, has been analyzed extensively in both historical and modern contexts. He demonstrated a capacity to inspire loyalty, adapt to unforeseen circumstances, and integrate diverse cultures under a cohesive vision. At the same time, his ambition led to harsh consequences, including mass violence and the subjugation of populations. These dual aspects of his leadership provide a complex case study in the exercise of power, the ethical dimensions of conquest, and the psychology of leadership. The philosophical and ethical lessons derived from Alexander's life continue to inform contemporary thought. His campaigns illustrate the tension between ambition and pragmatism, vision and limitation, individual agency and structural constraints. Leaders, scholars, and military strategists analyze his methods and decisions to draw insights into strategic planning, cross-cultural governance, and the management of complex organizations. His life exemplifies how extraordinary ambition can shape history, for better and for worse. Alexander's global historical significance extends into modern scholarship, education, and media. His campaigns are studied in universities, military academies, and leadership programs, while his life continues to inspire films, novels, and documentaries. The fascination with Alexander underscores the enduring human interest in ambition, leadership, and the potential to reshape the world. His story provides a lens through which to examine broader themes of cultural integration, intellectual exchange, economic development, and political strategy. In conclusion, Part 9 emphasizes Alexander the Great's far-reaching influence on political thought, culture, and intellectual life. His strategies in governance and diplomacy shaped empires for centuries, while the cross-cultural synthesis initiated by his conquests enriched philosophy, science, art, and urban life. Trade, education, and knowledge preservation were transformed by the networks he established, and his mythologized persona continues to inspire and challenge historians, leaders, and scholars. Alexander's life illustrates the profound and multifaceted ways in which a single individual can impact the course of civilizations, leaving a legacy that transcends time, geography, and culture.
Alexander the Great's impact on world history transcends the immediate consequences of his military campaigns and territorial expansion. Part 10 of his history examines his enduring legacy, emphasizing how his conquests, policies, and cultural initiatives shaped the political, intellectual, economic, and artistic landscapes of the ancient world, leaving a profound influence that persisted for centuries. A defining aspect of Alexander's legacy is his role in shaping subsequent empires. By unifying vast territories under a centralized authority while allowing local governance and respecting indigenous traditions, Alexander established a model for empire building that influenced the Diadochi kingdoms, the Roman Empire, and later polities across Eurasia. His combination of military conquest, political pragmatism, and cultural integration demonstrated that the longevity of empires depended not only on force, but also on governance, diplomacy, and the ability to blend diverse populations into a cohesive structure. The Hellenistic kingdoms that followed his death, Ptolemaic Egypt, Seleucid Mesopotamia, and Antigonid Macedon, maintained these principles, reinforcing the long-term impact of his policies. Cross-cultural influence is another central element of Alexander's enduring legacy. His campaigns facilitated unprecedented interaction between Greek, Persian, Egyptian, Indian, and Central Asian civilizations. This interaction led to the spread of Greek language, philosophy, art, and architecture, creating a cosmopolitan Hellenistic culture that blended elements from multiple traditions. Philosophical schools, such as Stoicism and Epicureanism, incorporated ideas from Eastern thought, while religious practices and rituals were adapted to incorporate local deities and customs. The synthesis of cultures under Alexander's influence fostered innovation, creativity, and intellectual exchange, creating a lasting cosmopolitan framework for subsequent civilizations. The impact of Alexander's conquests on science and education was profound. Cities such as Alexandria, Antioch, and Ai-Khanoum became centers of scholarship, housing libraries, academies, and research institutions. Scholars documented knowledge in astronomy, mathematics, medicine, geography, and engineering, blending Greek methodologies with observations from the lands Alexander had conquered. Innovations in these fields during the Hellenistic period laid the foundation for scientific advancement in the Roman world and eventually the European Renaissance. Alexander's encouragement of intellectual exchange, combined with the stability provided by his administrative policies, ensured that knowledge was preserved, transmitted, and expanded upon for generations. Art and literature flourished under the Hellenistic influence initiated by Alexander. Sculpture, painting, mosaics, and architecture combined Greek aesthetic principles with local traditions, creating works characterized by realism, dynamism, and cultural hybridity. Literature chronicled his campaigns, blending historical events with mythological and moral themes, providing narrative templates for understanding heroism, leadership, and ambition. His cities he founded served as centers for artistic patronage, where artists, writers, and philosophers could collaborate and innovate. This cultural proliferation established enduring artistic and literary standards that influenced subsequent civilizations and continues to be studied and admired today. Urban development was another significant legacy of Alexander's campaigns. By founding strategically located cities along trade routes, rivers, and coastlines, he promoted economic growth, administrative efficiency, and cultural exchange. These cities integrated Greek urban planning with local architectural and functional adaptations, creating hubs for commerce, governance, and intellectual activity. Alexandria, with its harbor, grid street plan, and monumental buildings, exemplified this synthesis, serving as a model for subsequent urban development. The establishment of these cities facilitated the long-term integration of conquered territories and the diffusion of Hellenistic culture across 3 continents. Trade and economic networks expanded dramatically under Alexander's influence. By connecting the Mediterranean with the Near East, Central Asia, and India, he created trade corridors that enabled the flow of goods, technologies, and ideas. Markets flourished in cities along these routes, stimulating economic activity, urbanization, and the accumulation of wealth.
Luxury items such as spices, textiles, metals, and precious stones were exchanged over vast distances, creating interconnected economies that persisted long after his empire fragmented. These networks not only facilitated commerce, but also reinforced cultural exchange and intellectual interaction. Alexander's ambition, vision, and leadership provide enduring lessons in the ethical and strategic dimensions of power. His life illustrates the potential for extraordinary achievement through vision, courage, and adaptability, while also highlighting the consequences of unchecked ambition and the moral complexities of conquest. By blending military prowess with political acumen, cultural integration, and intellectual curiosity, Alexander created a template for leadership that has been analyzed and emulated for centuries. His story continues to inspire scholars, strategists, and leaders, offering insights into the interplay between individual agency, cultural dynamics, and historical processes. The myth and legend surrounding Alexander amplify his historical impact. Ancient chroniclers portrayed him as a heroic, near-divine figure, and these narratives have been transmitted through Greek, Roman, Islamic, and European traditions. Literature, theater, art, and modern media continue to reinterpret his life, exploring themes of ambition, leadership, and cross-cultural interaction. The enduring fascination with Alexander reflects humanity's interest in the possibilities and perils of extraordinary leadership, ambition, and the quest to reshape the world. In conclusion, Part 10 emphasizes the enduring global vision and legacy of Alexander the Great. His campaigns reshaped political structures, facilitated cross-cultural exchange, advanced science and education, and left a lasting impact on art, literature, and urban development. Trade networks, intellectual institutions, and Hellenistic culture created under his influence persisted for centuries, shaping the course of subsequent civilizations. Alexander's life exemplifies the transformative potential of vision, ambition, and leadership, illustrating how one individual can leave an indelible imprint on human history, inspiring generations and shaping the trajectory of multiple cultures and societies. His story stands as a testament to the enduring power of human achievement, cultural synthesis, and the pursuit of a global vision.
Alexander the Great's influence continues to resonate across military, intellectual, and cultural spheres. Part 11 of his history explores the long-term consequences of his conquests on strategy, science, trade, and cross-cultural integration, emphasizing how his vision shaped subsequent generations of empires, scholars, and societies. One of Alexander's most enduring contributions was in military strategy. His campaigns demonstrated an unprecedented combination of mobility, coordination, and innovation. The Macedonian phalanx, combined with elite cavalry and adaptable siege tactics, allowed him to overcome numerically superior forces across diverse terrains. Innovations such as the use of combined arms, reconnaissance, and rapid troop movement became foundational principles for later military leaders. Commanders such as Julius Caesar, Hannibal, and Napoleon studied his tactics, drawing lessons in leadership, adaptability, and psychological warfare. Beyond battlefield strategy, Alexander's logistical ingenuity, organizing supply lines, constructing siege equipment, and adapting to environmental challenges, remains a case study in military planning and operational excellence. Alexander's campaigns also catalyzed the growth of science and technology. Scholars accompanying his expeditions documented flora, fauna, geography, and astronomy, creating extensive records that advanced Greek knowledge. Observations from Egypt, Persia, and India enriched studies in medicine, botany, zoology, and engineering. Cities such as Alexandria, Antioch, and Ai-Khanoum became intellectual hubs, housing libraries, research institutions, and academies.
Figures like Euclid, Archimedes, Eratosthenes, and Herophilus benefited directly or indirectly from the cross-cultural exchange initiated by Alexander. This intellectual network enabled systematic preservation, analysis, and dissemination of knowledge, laying the groundwork for scientific progress in the Hellenistic and Roman worlds. Cultural and religious syncretism was a hallmark of Alexander's legacy. He promoted intermarriage, respected local traditions, and incorporated indigenous elites into governance, fostering cohesion and cultural exchange. Greek language, philosophy, and art merged with Persian, Egyptian, and Indian traditions, producing a cosmopolitan Hellenistic culture. Religious practices blended, with Greek deities interpreted in local contexts and philosophical ideas integrated across traditions. Stoicism, Epicureanism, and other schools engaged with Eastern thought, while local myths and customs influenced Greek storytelling, art, and ritual. This syncretism encouraged creativity, intellectual innovation, and cultural tolerance, creating enduring forms of expression that shaped subsequent civilizations. Trade and economic evolution flourished under Alexander's influence. By connecting the Mediterranean, Near East, Central Asia, and India, he established corridors for the flow of goods, wealth, and ideas. Strategic cities functioned as commercial hubs, facilitating the exchange of spices, textiles, metals, and luxury items. Economic integration enhanced urbanization, promoted wealth accumulation, and encouraged cultural interaction. These trade networks persisted long after his empire fragmented, providing economic stability and influencing global commerce for centuries. The connectivity Alexander created also facilitated intellectual and artistic exchange, reinforcing his broader cultural legacy. Alexander's leadership, ambition, and vision offer critical lessons in ethics and governance. He combined personal bravery with strategic foresight, inspiring loyalty while maintaining discipline. His successes demonstrate the potential of ambition, intelligence, and adaptability, while the destructive aspects of his campaigns highlight the ethical challenges of power and conquest. Modern leadership studies analyze his approach as an example of transformational leadership, emphasizing vision, decisiveness, and cross-cultural sensitivity. Alexander's life illustrates the interplay between individual agency, organizational dynamics, and historical forces, providing a template for understanding both the potential and limitations of leadership. Alexander's myth and historiography amplify his impact. Ancient historians portrayed him as a heroic and semi-divine figure, blending factual accounts with legend. These narratives were transmitted through Greek, Roman, Islamic, and European traditions, reinforcing his status as an archetype of ambition, strategy, and cultural integration. Literature, art, theater, and modern media continue to reinterpret his life, reflecting contemporary values and concerns. The enduring fascination with Alexander underscores humanity's interest in extraordinary achievement, leadership, and the possibilities of cross-cultural engagement. Alexander's legacy in education and intellectual life is profound. The libraries, academies, and research centers established in Hellenistic cities facilitated the collection, preservation, and dissemination of knowledge. Scholars translated and analyzed texts from multiple traditions, promoting inquiry in mathematics, science, philosophy, and literature. This intellectual infrastructure influenced subsequent civilizations, including Rome, the Islamic world, and medieval Europe. Alexander's promotion of learning and knowledge exchange demonstrates the enduring value of education as a tool for cultural integration and societal development. Art, architecture, and urban planning continued to benefit from Alexander's vision. Hellenistic art emphasized realism, expression, and cultural hybridity, while urban design combined Greek principles with local traditions. Cities functioned as centers of commerce, governance, and culture, reflecting both practical and aesthetic considerations. Temples, theaters, public spaces, and monumental architecture became symbols of the cultural synthesis initiated by Alexander, influencing subsequent city planning and artistic expression. In conclusion,
Part 11 highlights Alexander the Great's multifaceted legacy in military strategy, science, culture, trade, and leadership. His campaigns transformed the ancient world, creating networks of knowledge, economic integration, and cultural exchange that persisted for centuries. Alexander's ambition, intelligence, and vision reshaped political, intellectual, and artistic landscapes, while his life and myth continue to inspire leadership studies, scholarship, and popular imagination. His enduring influence demonstrates how the actions of a single individual can shape civilizations, foster innovation, and leave an indelible mark on human history.
Alexander the Great's enduring influence on world civilization is multifaceted, encompassing cultural, scientific, economic, and political dimensions. Part 12 of his history explores how his conquests, policies, and vision shaped Hellenistic societies, fostering scientific advancement, educational growth, artistic expression, urban development, and economic integration. This examination highlights the profound and long-term impact of Alexander's life on subsequent civilizations. Alexander's influence on global culture was profound. By spreading Greek language, philosophy, and artistic traditions across the Near East, Central Asia, and Egypt, he facilitated the creation of a cosmopolitan Hellenistic civilization. Cities such as Alexandria, Antioch, and Ai-Khanoum became centers of learning, art, and cultural exchange, blending Greek and local traditions in innovative ways. Philosophical schools, including Stoicism and Epicureanism, engaged with Eastern thought, incorporating ideas from Indian, Persian, and Egyptian philosophies. Religious practices were similarly syncretized, creating new forms of worship and spiritual understanding. This cross-cultural synthesis fostered creativity, intellectual inquiry, and tolerance, laying the foundation for enduring cultural legacies. The scientific and educational legacy of Alexander's campaigns was significant. Scholars accompanying his expeditions documented geographic, botanical, zoological, and astronomical observations, expanding Greek knowledge of the world. Cities founded by Alexander provided infrastructure for libraries, academies, and research centers, where mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering advanced significantly. Figures such as Euclid, Archimedes, Eratosthenes, and Herophilus benefited from these intellectual networks, enabling systematic study, preservation, and dissemination of knowledge. Alexander's promotion of learning and inquiry influenced subsequent civilizations, from the Roman world to the Islamic Golden Age, demonstrating the enduring value of cross-cultural intellectual exchange. Art and architecture flourished under Hellenistic influence. Sculpture, painting, and mosaics emphasized realism, emotion, and dynamism, reflecting both Greek and local traditions. Architectural innovation included monumental buildings, temples, theaters, and civic infrastructure that combined functionality with aesthetic appeal. Urban planning in Hellenistic cities integrated Greek grid systems with local adaptations, promoting efficient governance, commerce, and cultural activities. These urban centers became enduring models for civic organization, artistic patronage, and public life, influencing subsequent generations of city building and architectural expression. Trade and economic integration were transformed by Alexander's campaigns. By connecting the Mediterranean, Near East, Central Asia, and India, he established extensive trade networks that enabled the exchange of goods, technologies, and ideas. Cities along these routes served as commercial hubs, facilitating the movement of spices, textiles, metals, and luxury items. This integration stimulated urbanization, wealth accumulation, and cultural interaction, creating sustainable economic systems that persisted long after the political fragmentation of his empire. The connectivity and infrastructure established by Alexander provided a foundation for enduring economic and cultural exchange across continents. Alexander's leadership and vision provide enduring lessons in governance and ambition. He combined personal bravery, strategic intelligence, and cultural sensitivity, inspiring loyalty while maintaining discipline and authority. His methods demonstrated that effective leadership requires both vision and adaptability, balancing conquest with cultural integration and administrative acumen. The ethical and strategic dimensions of his campaigns continue to be analyzed in military studies, political science, and leadership education, illustrating the complexities of power, ambition, and historical influence. The myth and historiography surrounding Alexander amplified his influence. Ancient accounts presented him as a heroic and semi-divine figure, blending factual achievements with legend. These narratives were transmitted through Greek, Roman, Islamic, and European literary traditions, reinforcing his status as a model of ambition, leadership, and cultural integration. Literature, theater, art, and modern media continue to reinterpret his life, reflecting contemporary values and concerns. Alexander's enduring fascination underscores the timeless human interest in exceptional achievement, leadership, and cross-cultural engagement. Education and intellectual infrastructure flourished under Alexander's influence. Hellenistic cities became hubs for the collection, translation, and analysis of texts from multiple traditions, promoting mathematics, science, medicine, literature, and philosophy. The libraries and research centers facilitated the preservation and expansion of knowledge, influencing Roman scholarship and later European intellectual development. Alexander's emphasis on learning demonstrates the critical role of education in cultural integration and societal advancement. In conclusion, Part 12 emphasizes Alexander the Great's enduring impact on global civilization, science, and culture. His campaigns fostered cross-cultural synthesis, advanced scientific inquiry, and created economic and intellectual networks that endured for centuries. Art, architecture, and urban development reflected a blend of Greek and local traditions, while his leadership demonstrated the complexities of ambition, governance, and ethical decision-making. Alexander's legacy continued to inspire scholars, leaders, and societies worldwide, illustrating how visionary leadership and cultural integration can shape the course of human history and leave an indelible mark on civilization.
Alexander the Great's story reaches its fullest meaning when viewed as a complete historical arc, from youthful ambition to global transformation, from military genius to cultural catalyst. Part 14 serves as a final synthesis, bringing together the political, cultural, intellectual, and ethical dimensions explored in earlier parts, and offering a balanced historical judgment on Alexander's place in world history. Alexander's greatest achievement was not merely the conquest of territory, but the creation of a connected world. Before his campaigns, civilizations across Greece, Egypt, Persia, Central Asia, and India existed largely in parallel, interacting only intermittently. Alexander's empire forcibly yet decisively collapsed these boundaries. Roads, cities, administrative systems, and shared languages enabled sustained interaction across continents. This connectivity reshaped how societies understood geography, identity, and power, marking a turning point in the history of globalization. Politically, Alexander redefined imperial rule. Unlike earlier conquerors who imposed rigid dominance, he experimented with integration. By adopting Persian court customs, appointing local officials, respecting religious traditions, and encouraging intermarriage, Alexander attempted to create a ruling elite that transcended ethnicity. While this policy generated resistance among Macedonian elites, it demonstrated a forward-looking vision of governance suited to a multicultural empire. Later empires, from Rome to Byzantium and beyond, would adopt similar strategies, confirming the long-term influence of his political innovations. Militarily, Alexander remains unmatched in consistency and adaptability.
he never lost a major battle, despite fighting across deserts, mountains, rivers, and unfamiliar climates. His ability to read terrain, anticipate enemy movements, and inspire troops allowed him to defeat larger and more experienced armies. Yet his military success also reveals the limits of conquest. Continuous warfare exhausted his soldiers, strained logistics, and ultimately contributed to unrest within his ranks. Alexander's career thus illustrates both the heights of strategic brilliance and the human costs of relentless expansion. Culturally, the Hellenistic world stands as Alexander's most enduring legacy. Greek language and education spread widely, but they did not erase local traditions. Instead, hybrid cultures emerged, visible in art, religion, philosophy, and daily life. This synthesis produced new forms of expression that were neither purely Greek nor purely local, but distinctly Hellenistic. These cultural forms influenced Roman civilization and later shaped Islamic and European intellectual traditions, ensuring Alexander's indirect impact on medieval and modern history. Intellectually, Alexander's campaigns created conditions for extraordinary advances in knowledge. The libraries, academies, and research centers of the Hellenistic world preserved and expanded learning in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, geography, and philosophy. Knowledge from Egypt, Mesopotamia, Persia, and India entered Greek scholarly traditions, creating a truly international intellectual environment. Without this exchange, many classical texts and scientific ideas might never have survived to influence later civilizations. Economically, Alexander's integration of trade networks transformed regional economies into interconnected systems. Standardized coinage, secure trade routes, and urban marketplaces stimulated commerce across vast distances. These economic foundations supported urban growth, cultural exchange, and political stability long after Alexander's death. Even as his empire fragmented, the economic structures he initiated continued to function, demonstrating the durability of his impact. Yet no historical judgment of Alexander is complete without confronting the darker dimensions of his legacy. His conquests involved mass violence, destruction of cities, and the subjugation of populations. Resistance was often met with brutality, and entire communities suffered for the sake of imperial ambition. These realities challenge romanticized portrayals of Alexander as a purely heroic figure. His life forces historians to grapple with the moral ambiguity of greatness and the ethical costs of empire building. Alexander's premature death at the age of 32 underscores the fragility of individual-driven empires. Without a clear successor, his empire fragmented almost immediately, leading to decades of conflict among his generals. This outcome reveals a critical limitation of Alexander's leadership, his failure to institutionalize succession and long-term governance. While his vision reshaped the world, its political unity proved unsustainable without his personal authority. Across centuries, Alexander's image has been continuously reinterpreted. To ancient Greeks, he was a heroic conqueror. To Romans, a model of imperial ambition. To Islamic scholars, a wise and just ruler. To modern historians, a complex figure shaped by culture, circumstance, and personality. This adaptability of his image reflects the depth of his historical impact. Alexander is not merely remembered, he is continually reimagined. In the final assessment, Alexander the Great stands as one of history's most transformative figures. He did not simply conquer the world he knew, he changed how that world functioned. By connecting civilizations, encouraging cultural exchange, and reshaping political and intellectual landscapes, he altered the trajectory of human history. At the same time, his life serves as a cautionary tale about the limits of ambition and the costs of power. In conclusion, Part 14 completes the historical journey of Alexander the Great. His legacy is neither wholly triumphant nor wholly tragic, but profoundly human. It is a legacy of vision and violence, creativity and destruction, unity and fragmentation. Alexander's story endures because it captures the full spectrum of human potential, the ability to imagine a connected world, and the responsibility that such power demands. His life remains a mirror through which civilizations continue to examine ambition, leadership, and the meaning of greatness itself.
Although Alexander the Great's political empire collapsed soon after his death, his presence in world history did not fade. Instead, his influence entered a new phase, one defined not by direct rule, but by memory, imitation, adaptation, and reinterpretation. Part 15 explores how Alexander lived on in the political systems, cultural memories, intellectual traditions, and collective imagination of later civilizations. This part focuses on the afterlife of Alexander's empire and how his legacy continued to shape the world long after the man himself was gone. In the immediate aftermath of Alexander's death in 323 BCE, the unity of his empire proved impossible to maintain. His generals, known as the Diadochi, divided the territories among themselves, leading to decades of warfare and political instability. Yet, even as they fought one another, these rulers all claimed legitimacy through association with Alexander. They adopted his titles, imitated his imagery on coinage, and ruled from the cities he had founded. This demonstrates a critical truth. Alexander's authority was so powerful that even his successors needed his memory to justify their own power. His name became a political resource, a symbol of legitimacy in a fractured world. The Hellenistic kingdoms that emerged, Ptolemaic Egypt, Seleucid Asia, and Antigonid Macedon, were not replicas of Alexander's empire, but they were deeply shaped by his vision. Greek language and education remained central to administration and elite culture, while local traditions continued to coexist. This balance between continuity and adaptation reflected Alexander's original approach to governance. Even without a unified empire, the cultural world he created endured. The Hellenistic age became a long historical chapter in which Alexander's influence operated indirectly, shaping societies through institutions rather than commands. Alexander's memory also played a crucial role in Roman political culture. Roman generals and emperors admired him intensely, seeing in Alexander a model of conquest, leadership, and personal glory. Julius Caesar is famously said to have wept upon seeing a statue of Alexander, lamenting that he had achieved so little at the same age. Augustus, Trajan, and later emperors consciously compared themselves to Alexander, using his image to frame their own ambitions. In this way, Alexander helped define Roman ideals of leadership and empire, even though Rome would ultimately surpass his territorial achievements. Beyond politics, Alexander's story entered the realm of legend and myth. Over centuries, historical accounts blended with folklore, producing fantastical narratives that spread across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. In medieval Islamic tradition, Alexander appeared as a wise and just ruler, sometimes identified with the Quranic figure Dhul-Qarnayn. In medieval Europe, romances portrayed him as a chivalric hero, explorer, and seeker of divine knowledge. These stories often departed radically from historical reality, yet they reveal how deeply Alexander resonated with different cultures, each reshaping his image to reflect their own values and ideals. Alexander's intellectual legacy also persisted through the institutions he indirectly inspired. The Library of Alexandria, though founded under the Ptolemies, existed because Alexander had envisioned the city as a center of learning. Scholars working there preserved texts from Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Persia, and India, ensuring that ancient knowledge survived periods of political turmoil. Through Roman, Byzantine, and later Islamic scholars, much of this knowledge was transmitted to medieval Europe. In this sense,
Alexander's campaigns helped create the conditions for the preservation of global intellectual heritage. Alexander's influence on geography and world perception was equally significant. Greek scholars, building on information gathered during his campaigns, produced more accurate maps and theories about the shape and size of the world. The idea of a connected world, stretching from the Mediterranean to India, entered the intellectual mainstream. This expanded worldview influenced later explorers and thinkers, encouraging the belief that distant lands could be reached, understood, and integrated. Alexander thus reshaped not only political borders, but the mental map of humanity. In military history, Alexander became a timeless case study. His battles were analyzed for their tactical brilliance, his leadership style for its psychological insight, and his logistics for their innovation. Military academies across centuries treated Alexander as a foundational figure in strategic thought. Yet equally important were the warnings his career offered, the dangers of overextension, the strain on troops, and the instability of empires built around a single charismatic leader. His life became both an inspiration and a cautionary lesson. Culturally, Alexander's legacy continued through art, language, and education. Greek remained the lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean for centuries, shaping literature, philosophy, and administration. Artistic styles developed during the Hellenistic period influenced Rome art, and through Rome, Western artistic traditions. The emphasis on realism, emotion, and individuality in Hellenistic art can be traced back to the cultural transformations initiated by Alexander's conquests. At the same time, modern historians approach Alexander with greater critical distance. Rather than viewing him solely as a heroic conqueror, contemporary scholarship examines the social, economic, and human costs of his campaigns. Archaeology, comparative history, and interdisciplinary studies reveal the complexity of his impact, how progress and destruction were deeply intertwined. This modern reassessment does not diminish Alexander's importance, but it enriches our understanding of him as a product of his time as well as a shaper of history. Alexander's enduring power lies in his ability to exist simultaneously as history and symbol. He was a real human being with flaws, ambitions, and limitations, yet he also became a timeless idea of conquest, unity, curiosity, and boundless aspiration. Few figures have so completely transcended their era. His life invites each generation to ask fundamental questions about power, leadership, cultural exchange, and the price of greatness. In conclusion, Part 15 explores the long afterlife of Alexander's empire and memory. Though his political creation did not survive intact, his influence permeated centuries of history through institutions, ideas, myths, and models of leadership. Alexander did not simply change the world he conquered, he changed how future civilizations imagined power, culture, and global connection. His empire ended, but his presence in human history did not, and perhaps never will.
Alexander the Great's life and legacy invite reflection not only on ancient history, but on the enduring nature of power, ambition, and human aspiration. By the time his story reaches its final analytical phase, it becomes clear that Alexander was more than a conqueror or king. He was a catalyst who accelerated historical processes already underway and redirected them on a global scale. Part 16 offers a deep, reflective conclusion to the long narrative, examining Alexander as a human being, a political phenomenon, and a timeless symbol whose relevance continues into the modern world. At the heart of Alexander's story lies the tension between vision and limitation. From his youth, he imagined a world united under a single authority, bound together by shared culture, exchange, and loyalty.
His campaigns brought unprecedented connectivity between East and West, yet they also revealed the fragility of unity imposed through force. Alexander's empire depended heavily on his personal leadership, charisma, and presence. When he died, the system he created lacked institutional stability, demonstrating a fundamental truth of history. Lasting empires require structures stronger than individual will. Alexander's personality played a decisive role in shaping his achievements and failures. Ancient sources describe him as courageous, intellectually curious, emotionally intense, and often impulsive. These traits fueled his brilliance on the battlefield and his ability to inspire loyalty, but they also led to moments of cruelty, mistrust, and excess. His treatment of friends, such as Clytus and Philotas, reveals the psychological strain of absolute power. In this sense, Alexander's life serves as a case study in how greatness and vulnerability often coexist within the same individual. From a political perspective, Alexander transformed kingship itself. He merged Macedonian military leadership with Persian imperial traditions, presenting himself as both conqueror and legitimate ruler. This hybrid model influenced later monarchies across the Hellenistic and Roman worlds. However, it also alienated segments of his own army, who struggled to accept the cultural blending that Alexander embraced. The tension between innovation and tradition became one of the defining challenges of his reign, reflecting broader questions about governance in multicultural empires. Economically, Alexander's conquests reshaped ancient systems of wealth and exchange. The redistribution of Persian treasure, the founding of cities, and the opening of long-distance trade routes stimulated economic growth across vast regions. Markets expanded, currencies circulated more widely, and commercial networks connected distant societies. Yet economic integration also brought inequality, exploitation, and disruption to local communities. Alexander's economic legacy, like his political one, was complex, generating opportunity while imposing heavy costs. Culturally, Alexander's impact was profound and enduring. The spread of Greek language, education, and artistic forms created a shared cultural framework across much of the known world. This Hellenistic culture did not erase local identities, but interacted with them, producing new hybrid traditions. Philosophy, science, and art flourished in this environment, benefiting from cross-cultural dialogue. Alexander's role in enabling this exchange remains one of his most significant contributions to human history. Religion and ideology also evolved under Alexander's influence. He respected local religious practices and often portrayed himself as divinely favored, navigating the spiritual landscapes of different cultures. Over time, his image took on semi-divine qualities, shaping later concepts of sacred kingship. This blending of political authority and divine symbolism influenced rulers for centuries, raising enduring questions about the relationship between power and belief. In military history, Alexander stands as both an innovator and a warning. His strategies demonstrated the effectiveness of adaptability, intelligence gathering, and morale-based leadership. At the same time, the exhaustion of his troops and resistance to further expansion highlight the limits of conquest. Alexander's career underscores the reality that military success cannot indefinitely overcome human endurance or logistical constraints. Modern interpretations of Alexander reflect changing historical values. Earlier narratives often celebrated him uncritically as a heroic figure, while contemporary scholarship adopts a more balanced approach. Historians now examine the voices of conquered peoples, the environmental impact of campaigns, and the ethical dimensions of imperialism. This evolving perspective does not diminish Alexander's significance, rather it deepens our understanding of him as a figure shaped by and shaping the forces of his time. Alexander's greatest legacy may lie in the questions his life continues to provoke. What defines true greatness? Is it conquest,
cultural exchange, or the ability to imagine new possibilities for humanity? Can unity achieved through power ever be just or lasting? These questions remain relevant in a world still grappling with globalization, cultural interaction, and political ambition. As a symbol, Alexander transcends historical boundaries. He represents the human desire to explore, to dominate, to connect, and to be remembered. His story has been retold in countless forms because it speaks to universal themes of ambition, curiosity, and mortality. Despite achieving extraordinary feats, Alexander could not escape the limits of human life, dying young and leaving his vision unfinished. This contrast between boundless aspiration and finite existence gives his story its enduring emotional power. In final reflection, Alexander the Great stands as one of history's most complex figures. He was neither purely hero nor simple tyrant, but a multifaceted individual whose actions produced both creation and destruction. His empire did not endure, but the cultural, intellectual, and historical currents he set in motion continue to shape the world. Part 16 concludes the long journey through Alexander's life and legacy by recognizing him not only as a conqueror of lands, but as a mirror through which humanity examines its own ambitions, strengths, and limits. Thus ends the extended history of Alexander the Great, a story that began in a small Macedonian kingdom and expanded to touch continents, civilizations, and centuries. Though his life was brief, its impact was vast, reminding us that history is often shaped not by duration, but by intensity, vision, and the enduring power of ideas.
Alexander the Great did not remain confined to the ancient world. Long after the collapse of his empire and the fading of Hellenistic kingdoms, his image continued to evolve, reappear, and adapt within new historical contexts. Part 18 explores Alexander's presence in the modern world, how historians, political leaders, artists, educators, and popular culture have interpreted, debated, and reshaped his legacy from the early modern period to the present day. This part demonstrates that Alexander is not only a subject of ancient history, but an active figure in modern historical consciousness. During the Renaissance, Alexander re-emerged as a symbol of human potential and ambition. European scholars rediscovered classical texts and viewed Alexander through the lens of humanism. He was admired as a model of courage, intelligence, and worldly curiosity. Artists depicted him as a heroic ideal, while political thinkers studied his leadership as an example of decisive action and strategic brilliance. In this period, Alexander represented the belief that individuals could shape history through talent and will, a concept that resonated strongly with Renaissance values. In the Age of Empire, from the 18th to the early 20th century, Alexander's image took on new political meaning. European imperial powers often compared their own expansion to Alexander's conquests. Military academies studied his campaigns, and colonial administrators viewed him as a prototype of imperial governance. However, these interpretations were often selective, emphasizing conquest and control, while ignoring the suffering and disruption caused by empire. Alexander became a mirror through which modern imperial societies justified their ambitions. Modern academic history has taken a more critical and nuanced approach. Historians today analyze Alexander using archaeology, comparative studies, and interdisciplinary methods. Rather than portraying him solely as a heroic conqueror, scholars examine the social costs of his campaigns, the experiences of conquered peoples, and the environmental and economic consequences of warfare. This shift reflects broader changes in historical thinking, where power is studied alongside responsibility and impact. Alexander has also played a role in national identities, particularly in regions connected to his campaigns.
In Greece and North Macedonia, debates over Alexander's cultural identity have influenced politics, education, and international relations. In Iran, he is remembered ambivalently, as both a destroyer of the Achaemenid Empire and a figure who helped transmit Persian culture to the wider world. In South Asia, Alexander appears as a distant but significant figure whose arrival marked early contact with the Mediterranean world. These differing memories show how history is shaped by perspective and experience. In literature and philosophy, Alexander continues to inspire reflection on ambition and limits. Writers have used his life to explore themes of obsession, mortality, and the cost of greatness. Philosophers reference Alexander when discussing leadership ethics, the use of power, and the tension between idealism and realism. His life story provides a narrative framework for examining timeless human dilemmas. Popular culture has played a major role in keeping Alexander alive in public imagination. Films, television series, novels, and video games portray him in varying ways, sometimes as a heroic visionary, sometimes as a tragic figure driven by excessive ambition. While these portrayals are not always historically accurate, they demonstrate the enduring appeal of Alexander's story. Popular media transforms ancient history into accessible narratives, ensuring that Alexander remains known beyond academic circles. Education systems around the world continue to include Alexander in curricula, often as a gateway to understanding ancient Greece, empire building, and cultural exchange. His campaigns provide students with concrete examples of historical causation, leadership, and globalization. At the same time, educators increasingly encourage critical thinking, asking students to evaluate both achievements and consequences rather than accepting simplified narratives. Alexander's relevance in the modern world is also connected to globalization. His empire represents one of the earliest moments when distant regions became linked through sustained interaction. In an era defined by global networks, cultural exchange, and political tension, Alexander's experience offers historical perspective. His successes highlight the possibilities of connection, while his failures warn of the dangers of domination without sustainable systems. Ethical debates surrounding Alexander have intensified in recent decades. Was he a visionary unifier or a violent imperialist? Did cultural exchange justify conquest, or was it a byproduct of domination? These questions do not have simple answers, but they reflect modern values that prioritize human rights, cultural respect, and historical accountability. Alexander's life becomes a case study for examining how societies judge power across time. Technology has also reshaped how Alexander is studied and remembered. Digital archaeology, satellite imagery, and online archives allow scholars to re-examine battlefields, cities, and trade routes associated with his campaigns. Virtual reconstructions and digital maps bring his world to life for new audiences. In this way, modern tools continue to expand understanding of an ancient figure. Ultimately, Alexander's presence in the modern world reveals the dynamic nature of history itself. He is not a fixed figure with a single meaning, but a constantly evolving symbol shaped by the needs, values, and questions of each era. His story survives because it speaks to fundamental aspects of the human condition: ambition, curiosity, conflict, and the desire to leave a lasting mark. In conclusion, Part 18 shows that Alexander the Great remains deeply embedded in modern thought and culture. From academic debates to popular media, from national identity to global ethics, his legacy continues to provoke discussion and reflection. Alexander's empire may belong to the ancient past, but his influence lives on in the modern world, reminding us that history is not only about what happened, but about how we continue to interpret and understand it.